Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. Now, some of you may have heard that former broadcaster Charles Adler was appointed to the Senate over this last weekend, and there's been some pushback around that, particularly from the Association of Manitoba Chiefs. And what the problem here is that they are writing to the Governor General and the Prime Minister to rescind that appointment. And that's a problem because the Governor General does not have those powers. She acts on the advice of the Prime Minister. That's how responsible government works. And in this particular case, if she were to rescind that appointment without the advice of the Prime Minister, well, we would be in a constitutional crisis because she would be acting without the advice of the minister or the cabinet, the duly elected government that has the confidence of the House of Commons. And then we would have a rupture, and that would be a very big problem. So, first lesson, never write to the Governor General. So it's rare for anything like this to be rescinded, but this would, of course, be the Prime Minister's call. And this is what they would, or this is who any of these complaints would need to be directed to. And yeah, that's kind of how that would work if that were a thing that the Prime Minister were interested in pursuing. It doesn't sound like he is, because he did select Adler's name from the list presented to him from the appointments committee, and so obviously he thinks that he'll provide some kind of value to the upper chamber. Some of us have a lot of questions about his particular history. Part of that is why these Manitoba Chiefs are upset with him over comments he made about First Nations leaders back in the year 2000, I believe it was, for which he was subjected to a lot of complaints at the time, most of which were dismissed. Nevertheless, Adler is going to be a particularly controversial appointment for a number of reasons. Now, the other thing I just wanted to bring up with this is there seems to be some confusion among certain First Nations leaders among the relationship between the Governor General and the Prime Minister and how to engage them. Now, First Nations treaties are with the Crown, and the Crown is represented in Canada by the Governor General. The King of Canada, obviously, still there, but we kind of timeshare him with a number of other realms, and that's why the Governor General does most of those duties on her own. But this has been a recurring issue with a number of Indigenous protests over the years. One of the most notable ones was during Idle No More, during the Harper years, and when a number of those chiefs were demanding meetings with the Prime Minister, they also insisted that the Governor General be at the table with him, even though that is clearly not his role and would be a significant problem in the exercise of responsible government. Listening to what the logic was at the time from some of these leaders was the notion that the Governor General was somehow the boss of the Prime Minister because he theoretically has the power to appoint and dismiss a Prime Minister, but those powers are absolutely constrained entirely with having to do with the confidence of the chamber. The Governor General can't be at the table and override the Prime Minister during any kind of negotiations. It doesn't matter that the treaty relationships with the Crown cannot act unilaterally in this kind of a situation. The Crown must act according to the advice of the Prime Minister or the government that has the confidence of the chamber, and I don't think there's enough appreciation of how that relationship necessarily works. Now, at the time, Rideau Hall made sure to host a number of ceremonies for these leaders that the Governor General was attending and hosting, and that satisfied most of these leaders, but not all of them. But there were still nevertheless commentators who insisted that the leaders who were protesting this knew what they were talking about because of the relationship with the crown. But that relationship with the crown doesn't, again, the crown can't act unilaterally, so the relationship with the crown doesn't quite work the way that they seem to think that it does. And that's an issue. It's civic literacy among all Canadians, that most people don't understand the role of the Governor General, or what her powers are and how they're exercised, and what the constraints on the exercise of those powers are, and why that's important. And similarly, that lack of civic education extends across a number of different communities. And that's why civic education is very important, so that you know whom you are directing your complaints to, and so that it's going to the right person, and that the right person who can do something about it is hearing them. And we could get into a whole thing about jurisdiction and premiers and so on with that, but that all goes part and parcel with the broader notion of civic literacy. And that gives me a chance to plug my book, of course, which does have a discussion in there about the powers of the Governor General and how they interface with the elected Prime Minister, because or rather the Prime Minister that has the confidence, because we don't directly elect Prime Ministers. But the whole notion of responsible government is one of the main themes of the book, and that's why it's important that people study up on these things. So, in recap, the Governor General cannot do anything about that appointment. She cannot rescind it. Only the Prime Minister could do that, and we'll see if he's willing to listen to their petitions. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter, and journodale_no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.